So it's another year with another Call of Duty game, and this time around we have a continuation of the Modern Warfare 2019 reboot, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, and that's not to be confused with the original Modern Warfare 2 from 2009. I started playing Call of Duty during COD 3 and I've played every single game since then. Some I loved and I couldn't stop playing, and others I could probably care less for. But where does this year's COD rank for me? Let's go ahead and find out.
Camping boring, man. Where's everybody at?
For this review, I'll be breaking it up into 3 parts since we have campaign, multiplayer, and Spec Ops. I might eventually do a Warzone 2 review, but I definitely need more time on that to form a full opinion. But with all that being said, let's start off with the campaign. I won't be spoiling anything major in this video, so no need to really worry about that. But to kick it off, I usually enjoy most of the COD campaigns for the most part. I think BO3 probably had like the weakest campaign, but that was about it. I appreciate a good story just as much as I do good gameplay, and with this one they bring in some new and old faces. The overall story is pretty immersive though, and it does a good job of keeping your attention. It took me about 6 hours to complete it, which is usually the sweet spot for these campaigns, give or take. The cutscenes alone have a pretty high production, movie-like quality to them, which really shows off these next-gen graphics. The level design is also pretty impressive with how big some of these playing fields can be. That combined with crazy set pieces, several different gameplay scenarios, and just overall good pacing kept me engaged almost all the way through. The transitions between some of the cutscenes and then to the actual gameplay were super smooth. The audio design is top tier for the campaign, including the voice acting. The only thing missing, which was a huge downside for this entire game, is the soundtrack. There is barely any hard-hitting music or memorable tracks that are played in this entire campaign, or really in this entire game. I think I seen somewhere on Twitter that like the main composer, they were having like issues putting the soundtrack into the game. I don't know if it was copyright related, I don't know what was going on, but it just sucks. As someone who really appreciates music, this is something that I noticed immediately. Even something as simple as like the spawn in music from like the old COD games, or even the way the announcers used to yell in your ear when an enemy kill streak was called in was just super nostalgic for me. So those small details definitely get like some points taken off for me right off the rip. But I will say that every time they introduced a new gameplay sequence, they kind of made those missions last a little too long. Some examples I can give without spoiling anything would be like those stealth sections and the chase sections when they first introduced it. I feel like they could have added a new mechanic maybe halfway through these missions to keep it a little more fresh and like twist it up, switch it up. The enemy AI does feel smarter in the campaign, but the only thing I did not like about it was the amount of armored enemies that you have to fight. It's just way too many. And then last but not least, I have to say that the ending for this game was super unsatisfying. I didn't really care for the person they portrayed as the main villain, but there were other characters that had missed opportunities, and I feel like they could have sequenced and changed things up towards the end that would have made it infinitely more rewarding. This just made the overall campaign go from potentially being one of the best to just being solid for the most part. There are a lot of game crashes as well across the board, which can be pretty frustrating, and this alone makes me recommend just picking this game up at a later date when everything is much more smooth. But moving on to multiplayer, which is my bread and butter for a Call of Duty game, right off the rip, the first thing you are going to notice when you launch this up is the terrible UI. This is some of the most confusing and hard to navigate UI I have ever seen in a game. Before the season 1 update, it was like super laggy when you would simply just try and navigate through the menus, especially if you were looking for a game. If you would try to like make a class or back out a lobby before the game started, it would almost be impossible. There are still problems after the update when you're trying to invite your friends to a party. Just staying in a party is like really difficult in this game for some reason. I recommend that they completely get rid of this UI and revamp it from the ground up. Make it much more simpler, bring back the list instead of having these chunky boxes, and I don't know, I just don't like what they have now at all. The visibility in game definitely has improved since the beta. They have different indicators above enemies and teammates, so it makes it easier to differentiate what is what. They still need to fix like the glare of the sun on some of these maps and some more things that are, you know, kind of obstructing the vision and visibility. But speaking of the maps, I only enjoy probably half of them, if that, in this game currently, which isn't a lot considering there's 11. They just added, you know, shoot house, so that's, you know, by default I'm gonna like that. That was probably one of the best maps in 2019. I feel like the problem with a lot of these maps is that there's too much unnecessary space on the back sides of them, or like the spawn sides, I guess you can say. There's too many buildings. Some maps just have strictly buildings, so I don't know. The border map definitely, though, without a doubt, is one of the worst maps I have ever played because of the amount of cars on the map. So of course you're gonna get blown up, or people just gonna hide behind a car. It's just not a great map. And another reason I don't like it is because it's simply just a straight line, and it's a super narrow straight line. There's not really much opportunity to flank. If you go on the left side, if somebody's holding that down with a sniper, you're not getting past them. If you try to go to the middle or the main section of the map is just straight up cars. So I don't know what they were thinking with that at all, but I will say that the camos are great in this game, and they are pretty easy to get compared to like the last few COD games, so that's a positive. But the actual gameplay is where I have most of my problems. The gunplay is definitely more towards the realistic side. A lot of the weapons I've used don't really control that well on a consistent basis. I almost like never feel confident when I'm in a gunfight in this game. The movement just isn't as fast paced as Modern Warfare 2019, which basically just makes things slower at the end of the day. Because of this, much more of the game is controlled by assault rifles, shotguns, marksman rifles, and sniper rifles. And what makes this so unbalanced is the time to kill is super fast and unforgiving, to the point where if you aren't aiming first, you are most likely dead. So those weapons I just named, those are going to be the one-shot weapons, or a few shots and you're done, and you're not coming back from that. So that just makes more people pre-aim, more people pre-fire around every corner of the map, and that's great for slower paced players, or the sentinels, whatever you want to call them. But I miss when Call of Duty was known as being a fast-paced arcade shooter rather than just being a super, I guess, mil sim realistic one. I don't know if that's the right term, but that's what it feels like to me. I miss when red dots would be on the mini-map when people would shoot an unsuppressed weapon. I miss the regular perk system. I miss reload canceling. I miss being able to vote for the map I want to play in a lobby right before the game. I miss having leaderboards, a combat record, challenges, camo challenge pop-ups when you get them in game, and much more at the launch of a COD game. Some just simple features you would think you would get. I miss when you could get your kill streaks multiple times in one life, a UAV at least, come on man. Most of all, I miss the less intense matchmaking system from the old COD games. Skill-based matchmaking is in full effect. My lobbies are way sweatier than they have ever been, and that isn't even the worst part about skill-based matchmaking. The fact that if you try to play solo, or if I try to play solo at least, my teammates 9 times out of 10 are going to be worse than me and the enemy team. The gameplay in the background is a pretty good example of this. My friend and I haven't played since Black Ops 3. That was his last Call of Duty that he played before this one. He got this game and we partied up for the first game he ever played. That was the best game I ever played in the game. I died 3 kills off a nuke. After that lobby, it just kept getting worse and worse. Not only for him, but for me too. The enemies we were going up against, just they don't deserve to be in this type of playlist. They need to be in a ranked playlist, which got delayed. We're not even going to talk about that, whatever. It only took him a few games basically to have him regret buying the game. Playing Search and Destroy was probably the most fun I had. It's just that the respawn game modes have terrible spawns right now, at least, on top of skill-based matchmaking being cranked to the max. It just makes for a dreadful experience overall. Since S&D is already a competitive mode, I had no problem going against sweats there. It just makes sense in that type of environment. I play games like CSGO, Rainbow Six Siege, where I'll only play ranked, and just that in that environment it makes sense. But when you're simply trying to play a game of TDM, kill confirm, domination, partying up with just like some friends that aren't as good as you maybe, and you get into your lobbies with skill-based matchmaking, it just isn't fun. And the lobbies still disband after every match, so you can't form no type of storyline in a game. You can't build any friendships like you could back in the day, or any I can't say that word. Rivalries. There we go. Once the game ends, it's just like, just the heart and soul of that part of Call of Duty and just modern gaming really is gone for the most part. I could talk all day about strict skill-based matchmaking, but this video would easily be an hour. But honestly, I don't think it's going anywhere. It won't get removed probably at all. And for that reason, I don't think I would ever fully enjoy a COD game as much as I used to. And I'm just being honest with myself. But some other things I noticed is that they took away the kill counter that would pop up after each kill at the bottom of the screen. It was in the beta, but now it isn't in the full game for some reason. They did bring back the firing range, which allows you to test your guns out before you hop into a game, which is cool, I guess. They removed the slide cancel, mechanic, I guess you could call it, which I don't really care about personally, but I do wish they made the diving and sliding a lot more faster paced and overall just smoother. Getting wallbang kills also feels kinda impossible in this game for some reason. I feel like you should be able to shoot through a lot more surfaces, especially the ones that, make sense. I still wish dead silence was a perk like how it used to be, but I can live with it being a field upgrade, especially if it was kinda like how it was in Modern Warfare 2019, but there's an unnecessary animation just to activate dead silence in this game for whatever reason. You have to pull out some type of, I don't even know what it is, but you click a button to activate it in this game for whatever reason. There are just a lot of animations and other small things that slow this game down. On the bright side though, the kill streaks are, pretty solid for the most part. The only bad thing I can say is that the UAV gives you a noticeably delayed piece of information. Like if you kill someone, you can sometimes still see their red dot on the UAV after they're dead. But then for the chopper gunner, they improved it from the beta. In the beta, for some reason, it was only able to be completely stationary in one spot. But in this game, they made it, or the full game, they allowed it to be fully controllable, just like how it was in Modern Warfare 2019. And then for the audio, I do feel like the footsteps still need a little bit of adjustment to be more consistent. I think in the season 1 update, they apparently made the footsteps overly loud again, so I don't really know what their goal is right now, but I do like the audio cue when you get like a kill or even a headshot really. But yeah, that's all I can really think of for multiplayer in terms of feedback. I guess the only other thing I could say is some of the grenades, like the drill charge, was the shock stick, tear gas. I feel like those can be balanced better. I feel like the stem shot definitely needs to be how it was in Modern Warfare 2019. That just at least give me something to make the game more fast paced. But overall, I think it is a below average experience in its current state. But at best, over time, it can be improved to become average, or at least slightly above average at best. Like I said, skill-based matchmaking and a few other things rooted into this game are keeping it from being good, great, greatest of all time, all that stuff. But last but definitely least, we have Spec Ops. It just isn't anything special in my opinion about Spec Ops. There is currently 4 missions that you can do. They just added one with season 1, so it launched with 3. They have briefing cutscenes before you start them. You can't choose a difficulty for these missions at all like you could in the previous versions of Spec Ops. I don't think Modern Warfare 2019 had difficulty change either. They did bring the 3-star system back. The maps that they did use for the missions though are mostly sections of the Warzone 2 map cut to fit the Spec Ops mode, and the AI that you go up against is either really easy or really annoying. There really is no consistency, which is what the difficulty option would have done if it was there to allow you to control the consistency. They would either have the AI be completely clueless, or they would just overwhelm you with a bunch of enemies at once. The best way I can describe this mode is Warzone if it had a mini story. And I wouldn't even really go as far as to call it a story, but more like random missions that have no connection between each other. They even had like a buy station in one of the missions. It was basically like MW3 survival, but with 6 rounds instead of just infinite waves, how survival was in MW3. It was even on the dome map from MW3, but there just really isn't any replay value in these Spec Ops missions. Like once you get the 3 stars, I guess that's cool, but after that it kind of gets played out. The other big thing about the old Spec Ops missions was trying to beat them on veteran difficulty. That's what gave them life. Or even the survival mode, trying to make it to a super high round. It was an infinite wave thing. All in all, I would say that you should wait a few more months to get Modern Warfare 2. At the end of the day, right now, I think it's the highest selling Call of Duty, whatever. But whatever, you're gonna do what you want to do, but this is just my opinion. By the time you hopefully catch it on sale, if you haven't bought it already, it'll most likely have more content and features by then. But I just really hate this modern era of gaming where a lot of games, not all games, there's some great games that actually released this year, like probably one of the best years in games we've had in a minute. But a lot of games, I would say live service, to kind of narrow it down, that's the new term I guess you could say. They release half-baked with less features than the last one, and then they promote old features as DLC and updates later on. I just don't like that. But yeah, that's pretty much my opinion of Modern Warfare 2 at this current state. It could get better, it could get worse over time, but hopefully you did enjoy this review. Drop a like if you did, subscribe to this channel if you're new, and yeah, I'll see you guys all in the next one, man. Peace.